Hey guys, it's your girl Jackie O. Welcome back to my channel. Today, as you can see by the title, I'm going to be talking about bronzers. Okay, so let's talk about what a bronzer is and what a bronzer isn't. A bronzer and contour are not the same thing, okay? Bronzers add warmth around the face, and contouring adds depth. So anytime you're trying to look like you haven't eaten in 5 days, that's when you contour. Contour is usually like an ashy color. It's more of like a cooler shade that you would use like on the hollows of the cheekbones, around the perimeter of the face. And again, it's to add depth. It's literally to add depth in your face. Whereas a bronzer, you're not going to look as sculpted with a bronzer because you're adding warmth. But I like to use both of them as a way to kind of like hide the line demarcation in your foundation. And so no matter which one you prefer, as long as you're wearing foundation, I would highly recommend that you use either or. It just depends on ultimately like what you want the end result to look. So I'll give you an example. When I'm partying, I'm contouring. Contouring is for when I know I'm gonna be photographed, I know I'm gonna be snatched, and I know that I wanna look a little bit more chiseled than I already am, right? And then maybe someone who already has like really harsh facial features would maybe want to bronze because bronzer is a little more soft. Maybe it's something that you're going to wear during the day or something to that effect. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense and I've explained that well enough for you guys. Now let's talk about the tools I like to bronze with. Usually if I'm going to bronze, I'm going to use something that's big and fluffy because bronzer can go from 0 to 60 real quick, okay? Bronzers are, again, they're warm. They're usually more warm. So for someone who doesn't have warm undertones, you're taking a powder that's not your natural foundation. So you really have to kind of be careful how you apply it, okay? So I like using a big fluffy dome brush because the color, a brush that's usually not as dense as maybe like a contour brush that's like angled really tight. This one's a little more fluffy. This is a Marc Jacobs brush. Horrible example because this brush is obscenely expensive and there are definitely cheaper alternatives out there. This is just one that I really like. So don't judge me. It is large, as you can see, very fluffy. It's very dense, and it just really kind of lets me apply a light amount of color around the perimeter of my face. Remember, anytime a brush is really tight, you're gonna get more color payoff. Whenever it's a little more fluffy, a little bit easier to move around, that's when you're gonna get a more softer airbrush look. For example, like your blending eyeshadow brushes. Notice how the bristles of the brush are kind of more fluffy and dispersed outward. What's this firework motion? I don't know, but hopefully it's making sense. But anyway, that is when you want a softer wash of color. You always want to go towards brushes that are going to give you a soft wash of color. Now let's get into my favorite bronzers. I actually don't have a ton of them, and some of them are for the drugstore, some of them are professional. So it's really hard for me to sometimes find like Black Radiance products, the CoverGirl Queen Collection products, because it's like I have to really go actively search for them, which is really annoying. But anyway, I said all that to say, girl, the CoverGirl Queen Collection bronzer is probably one of my staples. So it's a little on the red side. So this is a bronzer that I pretty much only use in the summer. I just feel like it's a little bit too much warmth in the winter. And then in the winter, usually our skin, you know, gets a little bit lighter anyway. So this can just go really red real quick. These bronzers come in 3 shades. I will advise you though, the first 2 are literally like the exact same. Like there's no difference between the first 2. This is the darkest one. It's in the shade Q120, aka Ebony Bronze. I love this one. I've been using this one for years. It's also great to put in your kit, and I can't see why this wouldn't work on a multitude of different skin tones. Even if it is your skin color, it will still kind of like add warmth around the perimeter of your face. So I can definitely see this as a multi-useful product for a lot of you guys out there that are like, bronzers are not dark enough. Girl, yes they are. And they come in CoverGirl Queen Collection. Okay, thank you. By the way, one thing I should mention, what you want to look for in a bronzer is basically anything that is darker than your skin tone, obvious. And bronzers usually are matte in texture, and they may have a little bit of like gold freckles, but a bronzer is never shimmery. A bronzer is never like, it should not look like a highlight. It should be, for the most part, very matte. The next bronzer that I want to talk about is a professional brand. This one is from Graftobian, Vital Shimmer Bronzer. I can usually only find these on Amazon, so I'm going to link where I get mine. This one is like a powder. It's like a pressed to loose powder finish. And any of you guys that have used this know what I mean by that. As soon as you put your brush in, it kind of breaks up into like a loose powder. But it's very beautiful. It's almost kind of in that neutral, warm. Bronzers can be neutral. They can be warm. But if it's cool, it's not a bronzer. It ain't a bronzer, okay? So this one is kind of somewhere in the middle. It's not too red. It's not too warm. It's almost kind of like a warm neutral. It's got a slight amount of shimmer. It's not gonna pull as red as the CoverGirl one. You know, like when I'm a little bit more chocolatey, when I'm a little bit more rich in chocolate, then I can use the CoverGirl Queen. I'm not really there yet. It's still winter here in LA. Now moving on into the high-end range, Birdman hands. If you happen to browse by a Bobbi Brown, check out their bronzers now. However, Bobbi, if you could just add 1 or 2 more darker shades, like Bobbi Brown is really here for the brown girls, but the bronzing powder that I use is in the shade Deep, and this is the darkest shade that they carry, unfortunately, and it's really not that dark. It's almost my skin color. But what I enjoy about this bronzer is, and I really appreciate about this bronzer, it's just like the perfect neutral. I can wear this bronzer all year round. This is my winter bronzer because I mentioned with the other 2 earlier, they're a little bit more, they've got a little bit more warmth. So this is what I like to do to kind of like bam, 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 hit that hairline. It will help blend my foundation and add that warmth to my skin. But because it's so neutral, it's not gonna make me look super, super red. I just wish it came in like 2 or 3 more darker shades because this barely makes the cut on me, okay? And I'm dark. I'm in the NW45 shade range. Don't let the bright lights fool you guys. I don't know why people be coming to my videos like, she's so light now. Okay. English is my first language though. I am going to butcher this name. I don't want to hear about it in the comments. This one is from Guerlain, the Terracotta Bronzer in the shade Ebony. A lot of my girls here on YouTube, you guys that follow me, have raved about these bronzers and have wanted me to give my opinions on them. And I love them. It's somewhere in between these 2. They remind me a lot of each other, the Bobbi Brown one and the Terracotta. It's got the perfect amount of neutral in it, and it's not too warm, and it's an all year round bronzer. Really luxurious, powdery smell. Just a quick tip that I want to throw out there in finding a new bronzer, like if you're having trouble with something that you like or don't like, what happens whenever we try a new foundation, a powder or a liquid? If it's too dark, it turns orange, right? Well, orange means warmth. So, where am I going with this? Don't be afraid to take a darker powder and use it as a bronzer. You can always use a powder that runs like 2 or 3 shades darker than your skin tone if it runs a little warm on you, and use that as a bronzer. One of my favorite powders that is way too dark for me, but I like using this in the summer because again, it pulls a little warm on me, is the Makeup Forever Pro Finish Powder in the shade 185. It's like red. So I use it as a bronzer and it adds the perfect amount of warmth. It's a great summer bronzer and it's perfectly matte, so that's a great example. And lately what I've been using, also from the drugstore, is this powder from Black Radiance. It's an all over face powder, but oh wait, is that the right one? Yeah. Okay, so this is in the shade Ebony. It's their oil-free formula matte finish pressed powder. So it's in the shade Ebony. It's just, I don't know, I just like it. If you guys have any suggestions on bronzers that you'd like me to try and give my opinions on, please let me know. Bronzers are just kind of those things where when I find 2 or 3 that I like, I just rotate them. I'm never really like actively looking for new bronzers. I just have what really works for me and I just kind of stick to that. So hopefully you guys found these tips and suggestions helpful. I would love to see you subscribe and back on my channel if you are not already. And hopefully I will see you guys next time. Bye.